My name is Tina Marie, and I am the host of the Unbalanced Pedestal podcast. And I have a lovely guest, and we're actually doing a duo. So we're going to be sharing this
Yes.
this knowledge on both our platforms. And I just like you to introduce yourself and the name of your podcast, and so we can get into this heavy discussion about normalizing and apologizing to our children through communication.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be one of your guests. I absolutely love what you're doing. I am Deborah Faith. I am the host of the Exchange Place podcast. And the Exchange Place podcast is where we come together and we provide for people who actually have unaddressed trauma, a place and space for healing, but also to give people mirrors, so where you may be at this particular time, but also windows of where you can go. So I'm so happy to be here. I absolutely love you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Can we just say that I've been watching your podcast and the way you move, and every time you show up, you're just like so gorgeous. I love your hair, the makeup, the earrings, the big hoops. I'm like, my hoops is not as big as yours, but I love how you just like carry the everything, your elegance and grace that comes along with it.
Oh,
And and then we spoke a few times, off camera, and in the chats, and just where you come from and how far you come and what you're doing. It's just I had to reach out to you. It was just like
oh,
I felt everything that you said. I was like, I went through that, and this is what it's all
yeah.
about. You know,
That is, and that's why I always say like providing people with mirrors, like where you feel you know what I mean. It's different to listen to someone talk with it through experience, and don't get me wrong, not to ever um, downplay people who have gone and got education, but experience, I just feel like it speaks heart to a different level. It touches people in such a different space for them to actually be able to relate and bring them in, you know what I mean? And have the like the conversation that we're gonna have, like normalizing apologizing to your children, which most people would probably read that title and be like, what? You know what I mean? As a parent, because we've been so stuck, and that's the only word that I can think of, like in this, like a parent, we know what we're doing. When we become parents, I don't know, I can't speak for anybody else, but I know when I became a parent, I had no clue. I was literally parenting how I was parented and taking bits of either what I liked as a child, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Let me see how this works. Or just what I kind of thought was right. And we don't like, children are the only thing that we get without a manual. Think about that. Like you purchase a chest to get put together. It has instructions, right? There's instructions how to set up your computer. There's a manual on your phone. There's not a manual to children, and it's one of the most it's most the most beneficial things. Of course, you have older children now to see what they produce and how they become, and um, what amazing people they become in this world. But I had no clue. I'm a 20-year-old and my oldest, and about to be 15 tomorrow. And I had no clue of what to do. You know what I mean? I was just kind of winging it. Winging it. So, yeah.
exactly. And our children are like about the same age because my son is
Mm-hmm.
20, my daughter is 15, and and a half or three quarters. I don't know.
Yeah.
But thankfully, she's not act she's acting her age, and not like acting the age of what's out there in society that's now.
Yeah. That's a good thing. It's a really, really a good thing, because there's so much, with social media. I mean, it's influencing even adults. So I can't even imagine being a child in this time. Like, whoo, I can't. I really can't, because I see some things and I'm like, if I was a child and my mind was more impressionable, like which way and direction, you know what I mean? Would I actually go? So
I would definitely say that I speak about on my podcast. Like I can remember to the age of 5. So
Mm-hmm.
when I parent for me, and I'm talking to my children, even like throughout like before my transformation, I always put
Mm-hmm.
myself in their shoes because I can literally transport myself back to those times where they were. And I say, thankfully, the way I was back then, I was like very quiet and just, I hung up with my friends, and, you do your thing and you dance and all these things like that. But compared to what they're doing now, and then, I live in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and girl, I'm like, how aren't you like 12 years old? Like, why are you
I
wearing that?
know.
So I get it.
They're
Totally
exposed to
get
so
it.
much more. Like, think about the level of what beauty looks like for a young girl right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
and I hate to even go this route, but it's something that we should talk about. Like, think about BBLs and, body shape and body image, right? As a little girl who is probably not as developed, like, and I mean, I even experienced that as a child, but think of the extent that people are, people have kind of constructed their body, and nothing against BBLs, but it does send a message of what's beautiful,
mm,
what beauty looks like, where beauty had a different look and feel probably when we were younger, you know what I mean? But now it's like, this small waist, these huge hips and butt and boobs, and for the little girl who doesn't have that, like how are they functioning through, what I mean? It's just it's hard, and they're seeing it constantly. It's, what I mean, they're on their phones 24/7, and that's what they're intaking, whether they know it or not. So it's just, I'm praying for the kids. I'm praying for the children. You know what I mean? And everything's about financial wealth. So there's a level of pressure even on the children. You know what I mean? That I don't think we understand. Like as a kid, I'll take my oldest son, right? I wasn't even thinking about, and some of this is good, and some of this is also a level of pressure that I worry about. Think about 1920. Were you thinking you need to be a millionaire at 19 or 20? You know what I'm saying? You weren't. Where there's that level of making up your mind. What do you want to do? How are you going to be successful? Where it's like, you don't even know who you are.
yeah.
You're, you know what I mean? You're still a baby, and no disrespect to them because they are young men and young women, but they have so much life ahead of them. And I just think it affects them, it impacts them in so many different ways. That's why we see a lot more mental health issues very young. You know what I mean? And again, part of my platform is that as well, because we don't think about that in children, that they're impacted and affected by that, and even more now than ever before, because we can see everything. And I can't just see, back when we were younger, you got to see where you were, right? Now I get to see in this country, in this, what people are doing here and there, and it's so much pressure. It's just like, again, our kids have to be so much more mentally aware, I feel now, and self-aware of themselves to be able to function in a healthy way to even get to adulthood. Like, you know what I mean? And really do. We didn't have that level of pressure, I feel like, at all.
Didn't, because like granted, the Coca-Cola bottle shade, the Betty Boo, the Marilyn Monroe, the Beyonce, all of the all of that, that was always there. But just to even touch on, because you said so many things, I'm like, oh my gosh. Where do we start? But just to go back to self-image and body image,
Hmm.
um, and speaking on like what I talk about my platform, the generational curses. And yes, we're going to talk about communicating with about the children, but you just touched on another subject about the self-image
Yeah.
with the child. But where does that also come from? The community gets smaller.
Yeah.
The mother, the aunts, the cousin who's doing all of these with I'm not knocking installations, but they take it to like a whole other level. They have to, and with that mindset, you have to get the bag, which is not, again, not knocking that, but get the bag, and you get the guy who has this and that, and then that frame of mind that they're not even accepting of themselves. They're not
Yeah.
investing their own love. They're investing love into material items that may not even, I mean, I can't really speak to the BBL as far as how long that lasts. As you age, I heard
Yeah.
horror stories when people get implants and then 10 years later, they have to take them out because their body's fighting it, or they get some kind of disease or
Yep.
health issues because of the the bag bust and there's toxins
Yeah.
leaking. So it's like, is it all worth it? And again, I'm not knocking, each to each his own.
Yeah.
And, I did have, disclaimer, I did have thoughts when I was younger. I was like, yeah, I want to, get the, because I'm, a small cup. So I'm like, yeah, I want, but then it's like, as you get older, it's like, yeah, I'm not, I'm
And
good.
I always say to each his own, but I think we live in a culture where we are more concerned about what we put on us and whether that is a new body, different clothing or name brand clothing. The things that we have, we're more concerned about that than what we put inside of us and how much we put inside of us. You know what I mean? Whether that's education and just, you know what I mean, understanding who you are and really examining that. And I think it all ties back to communication, like we're talking about, especially with our children, because in this place, we have to be able to articulate that to our kids and check their own mental health of where they are and what they're thinking. We have to be able to come back to them and say, hey, this is what the world looks like, but you know what I mean? These are the things that are important, and stop being so focused on what we put on us and really focus on what we put in us. Because you can have, like, one of my mentors always say this: you don't want to get to where you want to get to in the destination that you're trying to get to, whatever that goal is, whatever success looks like, and not be well, right? Because you can have all these expensive clothes, you can have all this money in the bank, and we still see it every day. We see people jump out the windows or taking their own lives. You know what I mean? So there is, I think, that part of being able to actually communicate and have those conversations, which I know my parents would have never. Again, it was a different time, but even some of those hard conversations with our kids, we weren't having them. And I'm so glad to have done the work and continue to do the work to be able to have those conversations with my boys. You know what I mean? And be as open. They're young men, so it is a difference in that area of things. But to be able to really exchange that information, I feel like in past we haven't done and again, no offense to our parents. Our parents can only do, like I said in the beginning, when you're parenting, there is no manual, right? So our parents, most of us did the best that they knew how, because they were only giving us what they have been given, right? But I think it's just so much our responsibility, especially now in the culture that we live in, even this metaverse that we're going in, don't get me started, that we really equip our children for what's going forward, and go back. And that's where the apology part goes. Go back and, help them relearn what we've learned. You know what I mean? And a lot of times parents don't do that. They just like, oh, leave that there, and they're just going to move forward. And I mean, most people don't have those open dialogue conversations. So,
Yes,
yep.
exactly. Because like, piggyback off of that, um, like for me, I started opening up in 2018 with my
Mm-hmm.
children because I was working for an employer. I was the only minority. And, I was that person to do everything. Like I was a go-to person and everyone loved that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm, giving my value, and so I thought I was giving my value, but I gave too much. And then other new people come into the picture, and then they're like, yeah, we don't like what you're doing. You're doing too much. And it's like this, the flip has the
Wow.
script has flipped. And I'm like, what the hell? Excuse my
Wow.
don't get offended if anyone's watching this, some people like the H word. But I was just like, what the heck is going on here? And
Yeah.
literally at that time, my mindset was more so of not serving myself, but serving others deeply, giving, 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 never receiving, never having that, steady confidence in myself. It was always
Mm-hmm.
like wavering, there was like, it wasn't steady. Self-esteem was high and low, all of those things, right? So my mindset wasn't, sturdy. And so when they
Definitely.
just like said, picking at everything I was doing, I'm like, so here's like the scroll, here's like the laundry list of things I have done, and that didn't even matter. And so I took that very personally. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that was a thing that, take it, I something that I always have done, taking things personally. And so it hit me real hard. And I went to, a state of depression, and my children was witnessing that. And I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay with this company or leave? So I just chose to leave. And so the
Mm-hmm.
4 months after I left, it was very tough for me. But at the same time of trying to figure out who I was, because I had no clue who I was, and what my value was in the world and what my purpose was. I also started to open up to my children, because I did not want the same thing happen to them, whether they choose to work for someone, if they, whoever they encounter, because they still, my son at the time, he was in high school, probably, I don't know, 10th grade, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but I did not want the same thing happen to them. That's where I started. That's where it prompted for me to
I
start
love that.
communicating. And, along with that, from 2018 to now, just I also, we talked about, apologizing to our children, because, again, this is like personal choice for everyone, whether they want to be vulnerable and share their tells, share their stories. And, I apologize for all the times I was angry and I was yelling, because you're frustrated within yourself. And if someone does something to you, who do we take out on? Our children.
The person close, yeah, the person's closest to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I really love that you shared that because I think um, I hope for the people that are listening that it gives them a different perspective of that. Me too, right? I love to hear stories where I can so relate. In 2019, I lost my job, and I had always been, I had always worked, didn't know what not working looked like. I went into a state of depression as well. With a combination of things, I was dealing with my finally dealing with my dad's death, who had died in 2016. I was dealing with what I actually do with the podcast not working. It was like a bunch of grief, of loss that I had um, experienced. And I was in a place that I had never been. I was always able to keep things going, so to speak. And my children were old enough where I'm sure they always saw when I went through stuff, but it looked very different. And I finally had to be honest. And I think and know that it was probably the most vulnerable place. And it initially didn't feel good to be able to tell. My son was, I think he was 11th grade, because it was right around the time it was time for him to get a car that I lost my job. So I was like, look, here's the real conversation, right? I had this money saved for him to, of course, get his car. I'm like, you can't get a car right now. And I was not a single parent. I'm a single parent. So I was always used to covering in that area, right? And I no longer could cover that. I was just like, it's no way that I can buy you a car right now. Yeah, he's like, Mom, but you have. I was like, yeah, but that has to go and be dedicated. We need to live. Like, and my question to him was, hey, do you want to stay where we live? We're in Jersey, so it's Springfield. Like, do you want to graduate from here, or are we gonna? It's expensive. I'm like, or are we gonna figure out somewhere else to go? What's important? I'm like, you're gonna get a car, but hey, this is what's going on. And that opened up what I love now. I really, really do. Just a safe, truthful place where I feel like they got to know me as a person and not a parent. And finally, they had the why to my oldest son, and he, of course, he got it the worst because I was young and you're just trying to figure it out. And like you said, the yelling, he said like, yo, you used to be so mean. Like, and it's like, no, it wasn't. Again, he felt that. I would have never known that. He felt me being mean when I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, just trying to provide, trying to have them in the right school districts, and you know what I mean, all the pressures that we don't share with our children, right? So I had to go back and apologize for what that looked like, to him back then, which I had no idea. You know what I mean? For me in my head, I'm like, you are fed, your roof is over your head. You know what I mean? We're thinking about all the parent things without thinking about the human parts of them, right? Like what that looked like. And I thought I was doing a great job in that area. And you know what I mean? I went through a period of time, I had to forgive myself first. That was number one, to say, hey, you didn't know any better. That's not what your mind was even thinking at that time. So I had to forgive me first. And then I had to go and apologize to my children. I don't always, you know what I mean, make all the right decisions. I don't always react the right way. I've learned to be, even now, there are periods of time I'm like, you know what? I probably shouldn't have said that in that way. And it's okay. I think we were taught like somehow, hey, I'm over you, so I don't have to, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to kind of worry about how you feel. I'm the parent and I'm here. So I don't, you know what I mean? I don't need to care how you feel when that's just, it's totally, they're humans. And that's why we deal with, you know what I mean? So much unaddressed trauma or things that we've been, you know, leadership or dictatorship that we've been under for so long. And of course, my kids know, they know I don't play. I mean, it's not that type of relationship. So for the listeners, that they're clear, they know that I don't play, but in the manner that I respect their opinion. I do want to know how they feel. Whereas as a child, it's like a child is seen and not heard. You know what I mean? That's how I grew up. A child is seen and not heard. And I didn't even realize that I hated that, but was in turn giving them that for a long period of time. So
That is a whole lot you unpacked. But the one thing that, I mean, everything resonated with me as always when we have these conversations. But the one thing that you said is that you humanize yourself in front of your children, because most children, okay, I can't speak to the new, I don't think they call it new age parents. I don't know what they call them, millennium parents. But for our generation, right, it was always, like you said, this platform, like, I am the authority. You are down here. Whatever I say goes, and that's it. You live under my roof, my rules. You don't like it, you can get out.
You can get out.
There's the door. But it's going to the fact that, I totally get that. Just having your children see you as a human being, that you don't have all the answers. And to, like, the communication part, we all still learning our ways of communicating with different people, the different spaces we're in. Everyone has their own love language. But to say, look, I am not the strong person that I used to be, or I know I made this promise to you, but this is how it is. And you're going to have to wait, or you have to make a decision. Or if you really want this, I'll, like, for my children, like, you really want this, you have, you're working, I'll go half on you, instead of you having to say, I can't get it. I'll help you in these different ways. And just to say, yes, I'm still your parent, but at the same time, I'm willing to work with you. I'm not the enemy. And, it's a collective, because it's an ongoing relationship. And, the difference between my son and my daughter, it's completely huge as far as the way they grow up. And I always love to reference the Love's commercial. Remember, everybody, the first child, you do everything for them, and they are like, sheltered from the world. And then the second child, just like, okay, whatever. Go out there and do your thing. So, like, my daughter got more of that transformation. She saw more of that, at an early age than my son, where he's much older. And so he got, like you said, the brunt of, the discipline, and, growing, and both of them, just in general, they flew straight, they got good grades, they are doing what they need to do. But at the same time, it's like, if I kind of question, like, if I wasn't as strict, like, how would they turned out, because I compare myself to, like, other parents as well, where they just have that friendship with their children. I'm like, I don't know about that, because your child is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they didn't graduate or they're not, being responsible.
But
So
y'all cool.
yeah,
Cute.
way too cool.
I,
And it's like,
I think you have to weigh that. I really do. I struggle with that. Like my oldest son, like he got less of me as a person. He got all parents. He really, I mean, now he has me as a person. But I know the majority of his life I was a parent, and I know that we weren't, like I said, when in 2019 was kind of breakthrough for our relationship. I think it gave him different insight for a number of reasons. A, he was finally able to see the truth, and he understood the why. Like the why matters, the why I did things. It didn't excuse it, but it gave him understanding of where I was at that particular moment. It opened up something. I struggle with the, like you said, kind of, I tell my kids to just say, we're friendly, we have friend moments, but I ain't your little friend. That's my favorite. I'm not your little friend. But they know that. What's funny? I think it's balance and really finding balance, right? It is okay to, you want your children to be able to come to you. Like, and I love that now they feel comfortable enough to do that, both of them. Um, to actually come to me with difficult things or things that probably are not something you run to your parents to tell them about. But I do think there's a boundary of, hey, I'm still your parent and I respect you. We partner. That's kind of what I use, or the language I use with them a lot is like, we partner in this. You know what I mean? Even my younger son, if he doesn't do anything in the house or he doesn't take out the trash when he's supposed to, I'm like, this is a partnership. So like, you know what I mean? We live here together in the same way you want to eat your dinner and you would be mad if you came in the kitchen and there was nothing. I feel the same way when I come and there's trash there. And that's, it's something small, but it's like, hey, this is a partnership. We work together to make this work, right? I, again, back to the just being friends, I think sometimes just relationally, parenting is definitely not, you've been entrusted with that soul, as I say, to lead and guide them along. So there is a difference in the relationship, no difference in the job. Like your manager or your boss is that for a reason. They have hopefully equipped themselves. And that's why we talk about getting ourselves more, learning more ourselves. They've equipped themselves to lead that partnership. So I think it gets real tricky when you kind of try to be too friendly because there's a lack of respect. And not that you don't respect your friends, but there's a different level of respect. Is probably the right thing to say, in those. So I think there's a thin line between that. I would say don't worry about your son. I think he got what he needed. I always say, and they're two different people, right? My older son, I'm glad in a lot of ways, even though he might not always agree. But I can see how certain things that I did that were correct, maybe not done in the correct way always, but that I see as he develops into a young man that I'm just like, that he's even he's like, I really, you know what I mean? I understand. I might have not liked how you did it, and I don't like how I did it. I apologize all the time. Like, ooh, I was a piece, because I know I was a pill. I know I was a pill. You ever have those moments that, you know how you used to react to certain things, and it's like you're in that moment, you're like, don't go there, because we're human. You know what I mean? It's us learning ourselves and relearning things that we learned wrong or were taught wrong as well. So there's times, girl, I used to go to, when I'm from 0 to 100 real quick. So like, even how I process that, but I know that, I'm aware of that. So I will, okay, take a breath, let me process that. And not only process how I feel myself, how I will respond to them, and what I feel like, you know what I mean? What I feel like gets through to that individual. What may work for my older son may not work for my younger son. So how do I communicate that to him, either one of them, where they're going to receive it, and not just here, like, but here with understanding and get it and move forward. And, you know, with behavior, like, it's practice. We don't, people ask for changes and they're like, I want it to think. Like, I told you yesterday, I was expecting it today, and behavior doesn't work like that. We know that. I know that because, shoot, there's some behaviors I've been trying to change for a long time, and I'm still working, y'all. I'm still working. I'm still working. I am.
Oh my gosh, yes. The oh my God, responding. That's definitely I've been working on that this whole entire year. Um I have gotten much better, just not having that knee jerk reaction. And this
I
is
like that.
with my children, but like with other people was like, where you just like you take it in and that's it's going to taking things personally, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, and I realized after reading this book by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four
Mhm.
Agreements, and one of the
Mhm.
agreements is don't take things personally, and that's something I've been doing all my life. I'm my 41, and I'll say I don't know when I started taking things personally, with having those insecurities as a child and a teenager and a young adult. But all of that is just like I realized that it's not me, it's the person. Their
Mm.
insecurities are really projecting on me. And then when they say something, it's not really about me, it's about them. And so going down it back to the children, it, and they may say something or they may do something that you don't like, right? And it's like, and at first you're like, and then after a while you're like, all right, let me process this. Let me go take a walk. Let me go, go cook. Let me go do something. Let me process, see from both sides of the story. And then you're like, okay, your answer, that the original answer that you had was totally different from your final answer or your final response. And, just having that cool, a cool period of really analyzing, okay, where are they coming from? What are they going through? And it's like, okay, this is the solution, this is how I can help them, and you dissect the conversation or that
Mm.
thought that person has said to you, and especially with your children because they may not articulate you know exactly what they are saying because we have so many languages in this world.
We do. We do.
And, some people may use things out of context and you're like clutching your pearl. I wish I had some pearls, like clutching your pearls. But for our children, and just like again responding to just how they see the world and from a different perspective, again, it may not align with our parental beliefs or our current beliefs as a parent, from an older generation or a generation who did not, are not in this technology age and all of these things that's going on, and seeing it from their way. And it's like, okay, I see your point. I get it. This is how we can work it out. And not just say, no, I'm putting my foot down. This is not going to happen, And like you said,
Yeah.
partnership,
Partnership. It
that
is.
is
It's
like so
partnership.
key.
I love what you said because it's so self-aware. I think once you begin to know you better, you are able to look at others, whether it's your children or anyone else. You're able to really, like you said, dissect where that comes from. I always say that once I have a conversation with myself about you, that's when I know that I'm like processing. Meaning, somebody does something, I'm like, okay, where are they? Like, I always, first of all, where am I? Let's start there, right? If we're able to locate us, we'll always know where we're going, right? Was I in a bad mood today? Did what someone say to me, was that I take that more personal because, you know what I mean? I feel a certain way, or there's still stuff I'm working through in this particular area. So self awareness is huge. Knowing where you are, and then also I feel like there's a part of self awareness that not only makes you self aware of yourself, but almost gives you the insight to locate the other person. Like, what do they deal with? What are their, you know what I mean? Especially if you have a relationship with them or partnering with them, whether work or children, to kind of be able to dissect that and then come back and respond. I think at that point, the response is more in a sense of empathy. And it's not just a reaction to whatever has happened. It is an empathy place of like, you know what? That person struggles with insecurities, and I probably tap one that they are not really even aware of now. Is it that? So sometimes even apologizing in those places, because people can interpret. I've done it 1,000 times and probably will. I interpret something as one thing, and I'm like, why do I feel like that? Why? You know what I mean? The why behind everything really does matter, and I think we live our lives a lot of times just saying, "Hey, this is how I am." Oh, I just go to from 0 to 100 real quick. You know what I mean? Where I know where that comes from. I know where, even when you were saying like overextending myself and giving, why was I doing that? Right. I lost my sister, and we've talked about this, but I lost my sister at 12 years old. And losing her developed this false identity, which was like, hey, I couldn't save her. So I felt like I was saving other people. And it brought on people pleasing. It brought on all these other and produced other things, right? So it's like really being able to get to not just the fruit, because sometimes insecurity is the fruit. What's the root? You know what I mean? Why are you doing that? Why was I overextending? Why was telling someone no a thing? Why was I so defensive? You know what I mean? Why is this, and this is something for the listeners to think about too. Like, why do I have this thing of strong? I always have a problem with this whole thing of I'm strong, because I think we misuse that in so many ways, and that it's kind of celebrated when people are hurting, broken, and sometimes even dying inside. And it's like, but I'm strong.
Yeah.
And just to have that label of strength, it's like, yeah, sometimes I'm not strong. I do need a break. You know what I mean? I do need help. And we've taken, and especially us, I'm gonna say Black women and men have taken on this strength, um, label, and look at it like, oh, we're strong. And I'm not taking away from the strength in who we are, but I would also challenge us to really dig deep and know when to be strong, and that it's okay to not be strong. Like, it's okay to have weak moments. We're human. Like, and to give ourselves more grace than anything. I think when I started doing that, um, it just helped. It helped relationally everything, but I saw such a huge change in the relationships that I have with my children. And that for me, of course, is priority. You know what I mean? Outside relationships, no offense to anybody else, I love y'all, but to have really good and healthy relationships with them is important to me. You know what I mean? So that breakthrough came when I really started, again, getting more self-aware. Why do you do that? Are you like that? Is that something, or did something happen? You know what I mean? Like, we don't think about it. We don't ask, do you question? It's a good thing for the listeners to think about. Do you question the why behind things that you say? That is just how I am. That's just who I am. I'm always fighting. Why are you always fighting? What put you in a predicament at what point to always need to fight?
Mm.
And I had to ask myself that, because, girl, when I tell you, whoo, all the smile and everything that y'all are getting, whoo, it has been a journey. It has been a journey. If someone who's listening to this knows me from before, I wouldn't smile. I just was a different person. You know what I mean? I was hurting, basically, but you saw it. You know what I mean? You see where people are. You can't pretend for too long with where you are. So, like, the smile, like, I see you always be your beautiful smile all the time. Is like, because that is proof of where you are, and where, you know what I'm saying, where you are in your journey and where you're going. That smile is not just like, hey, I wake up to smile. I'm smiling on days that I'm just like, this ain't the greatest day, but you know what?
Yeah.
Who, if you know me before, if you had any idea, Lord have mercy.
That is wow. There's so many things I related to. But the biggest thing was being strong. Like for me, I never thought I was a strong person. I was always,
Really?
I was cause people would say, I'm so proud of you and the things you have done with your children, yourself, and how you I went back to school, all these things that I literally from, because I have, well, my mom had three children. My sister passed away last year, so it was two of us. So, and then for me, for my brother, we're 11 years apart. So I'm like the baby. So I was like, oh yeah, we're pregnant, you know. I was a surprise baby. So
Yeah.
for me, I always grew up, you know, with this independent mind frame, only the only child syndrome, right? I know I have like, oh no, my siblings are older and they're living their lives. So I was just like always there, basically with myself and my imaginary friends.
Yeah. I was about to say you did grow up as an only child, even though you
Yeah.
have siblings. It was
Yeah.
such a huge gap.
But, just like, thinking about my teenage and my young adult years. And for me, it was just about survival. It's just like you do
Mm.
things. I just literally did things what made sense. Okay, where, I got into relationships and like, okay, this is not working. How to get myself out of the situation, home wise. Like I moved so many places, from in my 20s and
Me
my
too.
30s, here and there, and I have a stable home. And when I say stable home, meaning it's like, okay, I settled in, and then like for me, I lived in Florida. Loved Florida at the time, but the places I was moving into, nice apartments,
Mhm.
and this is where they had like the housing, boom, where they were turning apartments into condos, and then I had to
Mhm.
move. So it was like always that continuous, never,
Settled.
never like a steady home. Like somebody was like just be rest. So I was always on the go, always changing, maneuvering, changing jobs. I took things personally at the job. Employee may have something said something to me. All right, I'm quitting. That's it. So it was just like for me, I just maneuver, and people thought, as I progressed and how when I accomplished things, when I actually completed things, because that was also back, another subject, being consistent, which I always had, again, where my inconsistencies come from. But just to
Mhm.
talk about being strong, I always just did things just to survive. And I thought it was best at the moment, going back to, the firstborn, the secondborn, our children, we put them into programs and schools and get them into communities. And this is, we just did it, we just like not even thinking about it. And then for me, again, it was survival. This is things you need. This is what I didn't get when I was growing up. My mom, you know, we have these conversations, and that's one thing I started this podcast because I'm now having these conversations with my mother,
I love
my
it.
age, where I feel like, okay, and learning about my brother, my sister, again, at this age where I'm at as of this recording today, or what went
Wow.
on in the past. And it's like, okay, this needs to change. This has to
Yeah.
change. And this is why I started, heavily just communicating even more. Yes, continue communicating with my children, what's going on, and the progress I'm making with myself and seeing the change within themselves. But how many other young adults that we come in contact every day that we can, if we can just get them to see that they have choices, that they do not have to go down this route, that they don't have to follow the latest trends, that they don't have to belittle themselves, and have more confidence in what their life can look like, and not be in debt, and don't be scared of obtaining wealth, doing various, not just 9 to 5, how to be an entrepreneur. There's so many ways to be an entrepreneur these days. You can do it with digital, with services, or with products. There's so many intangible ways you can be a self-made millionaire, like you was alerting to earlier.
Yeah.
And this is something that we in our community are not really, there are communities that we met on, like David Shands, his community, his
Shout out
platform.
to him.
Yes. Shout out to
Shout
Dave.
out to David.
But
Love him.
doing something that everyone if everyone in his community can emulate that within their own space, again, within the African American community, that we can get back to the place we were, I don't know what year it was it Tulsa, Oklahoma? And I apologize if I did not say that right, where we had the Black Wall Street,
Yeah.
had our own community, our financial, like we were, and then obviously, led to those events where everything was, demised and it was shut down. But if we can build, continue just building that knowledge to get to where we
Yeah.
were, self-sustaining, and just live life and be healthy in the ways that we want to be healthy, and not having someone tell us how to live our life.
Yeah. So I love, and I want to go back to, I love the courage for you to have the conversation with your mom, because those are hard conversations, I think, because a lot of times, and I'll just speak from my experience because I don't know if this is yours, but I've had some conversations even with my mom, and they come from a different generation. And sometimes I know one particular conversation I had with my mom, I know that she was offended. And even though I had to have that conversation with her because I'm not trying to offend her, but I am trying to make her aware of how I feel, and how I felt and what that looked like and what that produced in my life. You know what I mean? And it's not a blame game. It is just the awareness of that. So she can understand and know. And I love also what you said about, I think when that door is open, and when that space is created, even in our community, to have those conversations. Because you talked about finance. My parents didn't talk to me about finance. They didn't talk to me about credit. I wasn't, and I don't know if that's different for you, but I wasn't taught what credit was. Bills in my house growing up was just like, don't answer the phone. You know what I mean? And we adapt. I don't know about everybody because I can't speak for everybody, but I know you adapt to your environment, and whether you want to or not, it's very seldom that we will see that somebody who grew up a certain way doesn't take on some of those, characteristics. And I struggled tremendously in those areas. And the one thing is so funny now because I just had a conversation with my son, and we're doing goals for 2022 because I always make them get goals that kind of go on my vision board, of, tangible things that they can get. And he's like, Ma, I want to at least be 760. But I promised him when he went to college, because of what I had learned, that he would have credit. And he did. And he does. You know what I mean? And but I promised him that because I was like, if I can't give you anything else, you know what I mean? I'm not rich, I'm not wealthy. I'm going to give you what I learned, right? And he didn't understand. I think I put him down as he's an authorized user. I think it's like 13 or 14. But again, in my household, I don't even know if my parents, now that I think about it, I don't even know that they had the knowledge to share at that particular time. And if they did, for my aunt, God rest her soul, I know she had the knowledge, but for some reason there was like I don't know what that is. Like, we're not going to equip the children in those areas. Like, they'll learn, which I hate. I think it's something that we have sometimes, like, oh, I struggle through this, so we watch other people struggle through that. And it's just like, no, if I have information that can help you, you know what I mean? If I know, hey, you're going to crash that boat of a head, why not prevent that? But I know there's so many people who have that mentality of like, oh, you're not going to get it unless you fall, but you shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
So I like what you said. I think that is so important. I think when communication opens up, like communication just it goes over, and it kind of, it's like the halo on the angel of everything. You're not going to have a successful business without communicating with your staff. You're not going to have a successful relationship romantically. You're not, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you communicate badly, period, it's going to show up in every area of your life. And it's so important for us. I love this platform because it's so important as a listeners listen to be able to communicate even the bad things. You know what I mean? Help other people. If I can help you, like I told you, I started my podcast earlier, I'm so glad, thank God for David Shands, because I was a little hesitant at first coming into the group. I'm like, well, I kind of started, but it gave me so much more clarity, right? And in that, just like I've always told you, everything that I learned the hard way and probably spent a little bit more to do that. Like, why make other people pay? You know what I mean? For the same things that you learned, like why not share? There is enough for everyone. I want to be clear with that, right? There is room for everything that God has given us. Your anointing has an audience. I don't know if that's insecurity on people's parts or I don't know what it is, but it's like, you know what I mean? Your platform, I can't be you, you know what I mean? And you can't be me. There are specific people that when God designed you, that you are designed for, you know what I'm saying? And there are specific people that I'm designed for that I probably, I can't talk to you, not that I can't talk to your audience, but you know what I mean? That people may enjoy the episode, but I'm not their person, right? You are their person, right? So it's like, it's so important for people to know who you are. So you're not just chasing money. Money gonna come. Like you know what I mean? And I know we all want it. We all want the bag. We all trying to get to the bag. But at the end of the day, when you know who you are, when you also have understanding of your purpose, money comes along with that, right? It's like by really being able to change and impact someone's life, like that's something that's priceless. And I think once we put real value on that, that's why it's so dope what David's doing, right? The community that he's building, and even to see a product, because this is a product of what is coming out of that amazing community. But those communities are important, and we need to have more of that. Once we elevate to a place that we're communicating with one another, sharing what we learn, sharing our journeys, there's somebody out there right now listening that's like, oh my God, everything that you said and I said has hit like on the needle on it, the nail on the head, that they understand and they've been there, and whether it's in the aspect of their children. And I just hope that this episode makes somebody, whether it's them talking to their parents, because that's a hard one, especially for I think in general, you know what I mean? Look, if I know, it's a hard thing to sit down with somebody that you're not sure that you love tremendously, but you don't necessarily maybe agree with certain things, and they've affected you and had an effect on you going forward. And it's even harder to sit down too with your children and say, hey, you know what? I haven't always made all the right choices. I apologize. Let's figure out what works for both of us, and not feel as a parent inferior. That doesn't make you inferior. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you weak. If anything, that strength to be able, you know what I'm saying, to really show up. And I'm gonna use this word, and not physically naked, but naked in the sense of like, hey, you are human, I'm human, we're human. And as human beings, A, we need to give ourselves grace, and B, we just have to understand we made mistakes. We were doing the best that we could with what we have, but now that you know better, you do better.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, being vulnerable was something that I've learned this year, because I was, again, we going back to the whole strength thing, right? And for me, it was just like, I got everything under control, being a people pleaser, recovered people pleaser, former people pleaser. We ain't doing that no more.
Okay.
Just so you guys know.
I know that's right. Make sure.
It's just like, I got everything under control, and, don't let me see you sweat, like all of those things that we've been taught. But just even going back to the parents, like a lot of it, what I hear from, before we get to that, like the first conversation that I have with my mom, that I probably offended her or not, but this is where I started to open up more about, coming to my truth. And I was probably maybe a little harsh and abrasive, but I literally told my mom, like, you're the reason why I have anxiety. And she again, clutch her pearls, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, I'm just letting you know. And again, the way I communicated that, we worked better on the communication, but the way I communicated it was like, it's your fault, but I put the pieces together, because hearing, again, the outside stories from my siblings about how things were, when I was pregnant and when my mom was pregnant and the things that happened before I came about, there was a lot of stress and anxiety in the household. And so
Yep.
a lot of that translated into the womb.
Yep.
And that's just like a realization that happened, and the reason why I came out the way I did, with a lot of stress and anxiety, and always, just always on edge and stressed out so much, throughout my whole entire childhood, adulthood, up until, I'll say, early this year, that I've managed my anxiety, where I noticed that, okay, if I feel anxious and I'm like, okay, what is it that's making me anxious? And that self-awareness is so key. And
Mhm.
it's like, okay, or if I find myself eating, like they say, like crunchy foods or cravings, and it's like, okay, what am I being anxious about? So having that self-awareness, but talking to, my mother, and that having that difficult conversation about her own childhood. Like, she's now,
Mm.
again, and I say these, she's talking about her life right now. She's her late 70s. She's not talking about her life. She's open about how, how she grew up, and how she's from the Virgin Islands. And
Mhm.
so it's, her coming to from the Virgin Islands to the United States, and all those things. It's, she's now opened up more. And I think, from me, my perspective is, just like every one of us, it's that feeling of vulnerability and feeling judged about the decisions that we made, that guilt. Like,
Mhm.
you know, we in the movies, the sitcoms, everything's portrayed as picture perfect, everything goes right, but life happens.
It does.
And it's either, we're more, thankfully, we're more in a age where things are being more transparent. But like you said, going back to their generation, we don't talk about anything that's going outside his household. You don't tell your
Yeah.
aunts, your uncles, everything is within these four walls. And if you say something, you're going to get the belt. you know?
Like a secret society. It's just such a dangerous place, and I don't think people realize that. When you say what happens in this house stays in the house, that at times meant molestation, that meant domestic violence, that meant so many other things, and we never unpack that. I'm actually a part of one of the personal growth spaces that am a part of. It's called the Healing Academy, and it's amazing, like what you were saying about your mom. We have people of all ages, but we definitely have older people who are 60, 70 years old and just dealing with. So you figure they've raised their kids, probably have grandkids. They've done, I don't say all of their life, but they've done the majority of their lives functioning in dysfunction. And it's just so scary. And we really, really have to get to a place that I just think as we heal and once we get on our healing journeys, everything gets better on that in that space, right? Your relationship with your mom, I'm sure that it's already gotten better, but I know as you grow and now there's an open place and space for her to even be able to tell you what happened or tell you why or whatever, that she's probably had boxed up for how many years. I think about that, and I learned that even with my dad, losing him. And I could have never had enough time with him, but I had him for 18 months. But again, I got to know him as a person, and it didn't, my dad went through all different stages, suffered from PTSD, depression. There's just so much. I don't even want to visit that. But in a lot of things that he did, it didn't excuse him from some things, because there are things that happened in my childhood that I'm still dealing with as an adult, right? Love my dad, miss him like crazy, but it did give me understanding of why he was the way that he was, and the lack of what he didn't get as a child, right? We have certain things that we need. We need acceptance. You know what I mean? There's actually one day I'll share with you the different cups that we need as children. You know what I mean? And as people, and when those cups are empty, what they actually show up looking like in adulthood, right? And we don't have those conversations. And I just think it's so important because I think once, and I'm seeing the fruit of it, you know what I mean? And I feel like I've just started to see the fruit because my journey hasn't been as long. It's still, ongoing. But I'm seeing the fruit of like what, not only what I look like, but what my relationships look like the people that I choose even in my life, the level of value that God allows me to send, or sends to me, you know what I mean? So it's like we really, again, that level of communication, we really need to examine ourselves. And the hardest thing that we're ever going to do in our entire lives is look ourselves in the mirror and tell the truth to us. Um, we can cover it in success. I've been there. But you're never going to be satisfied at the end of the day. There will always be something that you feel like is missing. You're going to think, hey, once I get to, 200,000 or 500,000, or I'm a millionaire, you feel successful. But like I said, something that my mentor that always rings, you don't want to get to the place that you feel like is the place of success not well. And I don't just mean well, just healthy physically, have the best body that you ever wanted, but like internally, what are you, if somebody flips you inside out, what do your insides look like? So,
One thing to oof, the other, I will love, okay, piggyback on a lot of things, but I keep, I'm like, keep thinking aside. But one of the things that I want to piggyback on and add to where, there's abuse going on in the home and a lot of those things. And another thing to add to that would be seeing professional help, seeing
yes,
a therapist. Because, in our community, I mean, it's more now accepting, but you go see a therapist, like, what's wrong with you? You're labeled, something's wrong with you. You're not accepted if you go see a therapist. You're like the outsider. And again, that's going to not addressing what is inside, someone flipped you inside out, right? And,
yep,
I've encountered people who have money, who are very successful, wealthy, and they're just miserable.
miserable.
They are so miserable. It's like, and that's the thing too with society, and yes, chasing the bag and all these things was being portrayed in the media and in the songs. It's you have all this wealth, and why, watching a lot of documentaries from celebrities that we love, that broke
They
my
were in
heart
pain.
so much. Like that broke my heart, like to the point where you're just like crying. You feel for them for so much, and they have all this wealth, they have all this fame, and they're alone. They're
Mm-hmm.
alone. They resort to outside, means, to
Coping.
their pain,
Yeah.
and they take it too far. And next thing you hear in the news that, we're having a funeral for them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I feel the same exact way. I was just actually watching the Whitney Houston documentary,
Oh my God.
and I think it's called "I Just Want to Be Me," right? And
I grew
that,
up with her, listen to her songs, from the 80s.
yeah, I, you know what? I'm glad that they did that documentary because it taught me so much. um, and it reminded me of so much and just like how I want to live. One thing that I always say for myself, first of all, there's a backside to every blessing, right? So we look at financial wealth as a blessing, but there's a backside to that. Like even just like a promotion. Yeah, the promotion is great. You got to a different level, but with, you know, to whom much is given, much is required. And that's why I say it's so important to be well when you get there. My prayer is always that, yes, everybody wants success and everybody's label and what we think success is, we maybe looks different. But I want to make sure that I have the capacity to handle what success brings. Because success, like that documentary, she was so successful, such an icon, like had so much. And at the end of the day, there was a small circle that could even talk to her, like really, right? And once you get to a certain level, you have to make sure that you surround yourself with people who still are in a place to tell you the truth, right? There's one person, I think she was a hairstylist on the documentary, who actually went that, and she was like, yeah, we would kind of have conversations only when I was doing her hair, but I wanted to keep my job. And I never want somebody's job and financial, what I can provide for them, to be more than my well-being. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so important to have someone, whether that's someone or a circle of someone, who can really speak to you and keep you grounded. You know what I mean? That is dangerous. That's why so many child, you know, stars and influencers end up, getting that fame quick, young. You're just kind of fending for yourself. It's like, you want to keep good people around you, and the people that really tell you the truth. So when you get a little left or you get a little right, that there's somebody who can bring you back. And I feel like for her, she lost that at a certain point. She always had a issue in certain areas of drugs and that kind of thing. But I think it went to a different level as she was growing and blowing up to a different level. Again, backside to that blessing, there was levels to it. Yes, she was famous then, but like when she did Bodyguard, she got a whole different audience, and it brought on a different level of success that she wasn't normally used to functioning in. And then you remove even her best friend, who probably kept her grounded, who was, you know what I mean, like able to probably bring her back. And not saying, again, addiction is a whole nother piece, but that she wasn't so consumed with the addiction that she had somehow was still able to balance. But I just feel like we lost somebody who we probably could have kept being able to communicate, having the right people in her circle as well. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things. Like, I never again, never want to get to that place of success and not be prepared, and not to have the capacity for, you know, the blessing, to manage that blessing and manage me well. But with not knowing who you are going into that place, ooh, and then people who are around you just kind of patting you in the back, because nobody's going to correct you. Who's correcting you? They're not losing that check. So
One thing I could say, like, for not just her, but and the celebrities, but just and myself, and just humans in general, when you are successful, you have things going on for you. And this is different levels of success, right? Success meaning you are making, more than your parental figures, the people who came before you, that's success. They're like, oh, you're making more money. It could be, a few $1,000s more than they made in their generation, whatever that is, all the way to having multiple yachts, different levels of success for everyone who's listening. But one thing I'll say that, what you said, being in the right environment, surrounding yourself. Okay. That's a very broad statement. Be in the right environment with people who are looking out for you, who allows you to look out for them, giving and taking. And this goes also to our children, who are your friends? What are they saying to you? Are they enabling you? Because we have to watch out for those enablers. Because I had enablers in my lifetime where you're doing something that's successful, or you're doing more than them. And they're like, we don't like that. Here's, like for me, like I stopped drinking. I made a pledge this year to stop drinking in the beginning of the year of 2021. And I believe I had like 4 drinks, wine, and it's only on special occasions. And, for New Year's, I was like, should I, get some sparkling cider, sparkling champagne? And then I really thought about it after a few days. I'm like, no, I don't have a need for it. Back in the day, it was like, yeah, but it's like, if I was that environment that I moved myself away from, then I would have been like, yeah, sure, I'll have a glass of wine. But being that I'm in a new space, new mindset, and I don't have enablers, because enablers are so dangerous, because they will do anything and everything to see, to have that control over you, really. You're successful, they either want to keep you down and stop you, or they'll enable you to control you. So, in the case of, Whitney, where I seen from my perspective that she was being controlled and manipulated into, um, you know, to do different things and just to not be free, to flourish and to be, her own woman. And again, that's just my perspective. Everyone's going to have their own watching this.
Yeah.
If you do have comments about that, let me know. Let us know in the
Yeah.
chat. But, that you can just see the people that's in your environment, are they looking out for you? Are they willing to speak up? I have this one friend. She's a very good friend. She's as 15 years of, we know each other from the time my daughter was, 1 years old.
Mhm.
And we live in different states, and we chime in, we check in with each other once in a blue moon. And we had this 2-hour conversation the other day. And she made this one comment. She's like, we haven't spoken to each other in months, but we're having this conversation and we're literally on the same page. I'm like, it's growth. And she's been through some things, I've been through some things, we share all that. But I told her, again, going through my phase of being very blunt about saying things, like, look, you got to stop doing this, you got to realize this, okay? Like, I was stop doing
Yeah.
this. And she's just like, and that's what being a friend is. It's like not being afraid to say, look, this is what's going on, you have to realize this. And again, like you said, that there's people, no matter how rich you are, they're going to hold their tongue, and they may just watch your demise.
Yep. Yep.
Because
All the
again,
time. It happens all the time. That's why, again, having like what you were saying about your friend who you're able to, somebody who's able to tell you the truth. And even though, truth is never, it's never easy sometimes to digest, especially if it's like correction, right? Correction doesn't feel good always, but it always works for your good. So, and when you love and respect someone and know at the end, like you said, somebody has your best interest at heart, that is not coming from a, hey, I don't want to see you do well, I just want you to be well as well. That it's received different and it's processed different. It matters. You have people in your life that you care what they think. And when you have people around you that are just yes people, and again, when you get to a certain level of success and wealth, especially depending on what industry you're in, a lot of people don't have the heart to tell you, hey, that's dangerous. That path that you're going down could be very, very dangerous. Be careful, right? So you want people who love you and not just what you do, and what you bring, but love you and want to see you successful, but also make sure that you're here to enjoy this success. So I also think that that's important, even with like you mentioned, like your children, and them picking the correct people. I love what I see in my children. I love, just had a conversation with my 15-year-old about people possessing him, that he's not a possession. And he knows, the funny thing is that he comes to me and he's kind of explaining that in his terms. And I was like, yeah, people don't get to possess you. You will have different sets of friends and you're allowed that. Don't let anybody box you into, if you met somebody that you like and you want to interact with them, you're allowed to do that. You don't belong to anyone.
right.
Um, but reassuring that, and I know that I'm not gonna get everything right, but I do know that I'm doing a lot right in that area. Just even my son, my oldest son as well, is like, when we talk about college, he's second year college student, and he's just like, yeah, I don't hang out with everybody. Like, he has that, where a lot of college kids don't. They're just trying to fit in. They're trying to find them. And me and him had a hard conversation when he first went to college, because I was like, you have to figure out who you are. Are you a follower or are you a leader? Are you okay with being in circles? Like, I parent different. I parent him different at this point because he's an adult, for the most part. Like, but I'm like, look, are you, you know what I mean? Are you picking people because you want to just hang out with the cool people? Is this really what you like? Don't, sacrifice who you are and downplay who you are to be in certain circles. Like, you're a leader. And once you figure that out and understand that, you'll pick the right people. And I'm proud to say that, he has people around him that again are doing the same things and trading stock and whatever. He's not out in the clubs and that, again, we all have different levels of growth and how we're going to grow. So I'm not knocking that. Been there, done that. I don't, to each his own. We have different personalities and we will go through that. Some people have to learn that themselves. And like I did, I had to, and that's why I always tell him, right? Experience, right? I had to learn and be in places, be unsafe in almost, child will be here all day, but be in places where my life was threatened, where I was like, why am I even here? I didn't even want to come here. You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing here? Where, I've been in way too many of those. And, thank God I'm here to tell the story, but I don't want him to have to experience that. And I always share that with him. Like, look, I was doing stuff that was just kind of it's like I really don't want to go, but I'm gonna go anyway. And then something bad happens, and I'm like, why did I come here? You know what I mean? Like, whoo, that was, you know what I mean? I just got out of here with literally with my life.
Yeah.
And again, back to kind of what I was saying, being able to prevent somebody from experiencing. I don't want him to have a gun pointed at him to get that right. I want him to understand, hey, listen, this can happen to you. And you're going to make your own choices. You are 100%. We know all of our children are going to make our own mistakes. Our job is really to help lead them and guide them through that, right? And hopefully give them the tools to make those decisions at that point. Do I get in the car? Do I go to this unsafe place? Could this happen? That they're even thinking that, you know what I mean? So that's, as a parent, that is our job, to guide them. We can't beat them to where we want them to go, because that doesn't work. It doesn't. But when there's that open level of communication, I think they think about things a little bit different, and they'll still make mistakes. I mean, they still will. I'm not saying that, but that they'll be without fault, because they do, learn their own ways. But I do think they'll pick other pathways than we did, and be successful and get understanding before we did. So shoot, if I had all this back in 20, I would have been woo. I would be far, far, far ahead. Far, far, far ahead. So
My
yeah.
gosh. That what you just said, whether you get in the car or you don't, that took me back. That was like so many, movies and different things that, from our era, and just support what you just said.
Yeah.
We can share our experiences so they can make informed decisions as young adults
Yeah.
based on, what we have gone through, to say, okay, I know my mom has talked about this. I know my father has talked about this, my aunt, my
Mm-hmm.
uncles. This is like the same similar situation. And I will make the decision to do this or not do this because I have the knowledge,
Yep.
not because
That
I'm
part.
peer pressured I'm not being bullied. I'm not
Yep.
being manipulated. I have this awareness, I have this knowledge that I can make on my own and not have to succumb to someone else's decision because
Yeah.
for their benefit. How many of I can speak for myself. I don't know everyone else, but you have those friends, those people that I've met in the past. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, let's just go here, and you, for me, like not knowing or asking questions. That's another thing, asking questions. So where are we going? What's our destination? What we're gonna do when we get there? And just going along, just get in the car. Okay, let's get in the car. And you're like, and then this is like one thing Oprah said, I forgot what show it was, or it's a clip I saw, I came across, and
Mm-hmm.
I think she was dating someone at the time, long time ago. And she's like, let's go for a ride. She's like, well, where are we going? What is, like, what are we going to do? Like all of these things, before she gets in the car, because your life, like you said, your life depends on it. You know,
It
there's
really
so
does.
again, this is going off topic, but there's stories you hear where people go hang out with their friends. Oh, we're just gonna go to the store, and next they're robbing a bank. You're
Yep.
the driver. What happens to that driver? Accidentally, they get shot up.
Yeah.
You're just the driver, or you're accomplice to something, and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah.
You never ask those questions. So, just by you just mentioning that, getting in the car, that's like, that can be anything. Before you say yes to something, really analyze
Yep. Analyze it.
what it is. At the end of the day, what is it that I'm getting myself into? Because it could be literally life or death.
Yeah. It could. It could change your whole life. Your
Mm-hmm.
life can be changed in a mere second. So,
Sure.
yep, absolutely.
And oh my gosh, this is like, we could go on forever with this whole conversation. We definitely need to connect, sooner than later.
Yes,
And
we're gonna bring you on the exchange. My engineer is actually we hope he's not COVID positive, which COVID is out in these streets, which we know. But
I heard, girl, I heard like,
yeah, so I had to like redo some things. But hopefully at the beginning of the year I want to bring you on. I have something special that I want to bring you in for. Yeah. Absolutely.
I
This
am
has
so
been
looking forward.
super dope.
I'm so looking forward to meeting, the crew, hopefully I get to meet Amber, because like the knowledge that she shares in, and the things that she's doing, her business and this, and sorry, that's my um let me see, hold on 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry. I have
No,
like
you're good.
timers on my phone that that goes off. So I'm like, what is that noise?
It's
Um,
all good.
yeah, before we leave, yeah, I just want to say that, I am just like so looking forward to just, meeting you in person, and, going back to what we were talking about, we're all that's in the same space. We're all trying to get to, these high levels, and we may be doing all the same thing, have a podcast, and we're doing inspiration and talking about trauma, but it's all about collaboration.
It is.
It
It
is,
is.
because it's different perspectives,
Yeah.
whether, you know, and it's like, the bookshelves, you go to library, right? There's a whole building of life of information. So you're gonna take that one book from that library, take that one, and then that solves all your problem. No, there's different perspectives in each and every book, whether, there's like 1,000 business books out there. Everyone has, you take a little bit of piece of nuggets and you make it your own. And that's what, collaboration in the spaces, and the need for people to feel like it's all mine, that mentality has to stop.
It does. It
I
does.
get offended
There.
really when people do that.
Yeah.
Like,
It's so
really?
funny because I always say it's never competition. Like we weren't created to compete. We were really, created to collaborate. And once you get that, I just think you get further with what your message is and what your mission is and what your purpose is. When you collaborate, there's no harm in that. There is just more wealth, right? And like you said, like a bookshelf, I always say like your fingerprints. I think that we all have different ones, even though they serve the same purpose ultimately, or similar purposes. We all have different ones and they can't be duplicated or replicated, but they're all needed. You know what I'm saying? So I just think when we look at it like that, we go so much farther together. My pastor would normally say, you don't go as far as your dream, you go as far as your team. And I feel like having those healthy circles and teams of people just make more of a difference than one person could ever do. I'm one person, you're one person, right? But collectively, even bringing our audiences together, people get different pieces and different perspectives, and that's how we grow. That's ultimately how we grow. So it's just it's a refreshing place to be able to do collaborations. I love it. I think it's just room for everybody. I don't know why we have this mentality or this small mind. We think there's only room for certain people. It's like your anointing has an audience, and your audience will come. You know what I mean? They may not want, and my mentor also said this, people always don't want all of you, right? But they pick the pieces that they do want. You know, a lot of us do different things. You may do financial things as well as trauma things, and your podcast may be broader than mine in certain spaces. But people, you know what I mean? And like Amber, you mentioned Amber, which I actually have, I'm going to get brunch with her, quote unquote, after this. But you know, she has a juice business. She also has a podcast. She does it, you know, different things, and people, you know what I mean. People adapt to. They take the piece of you that they want. So give it all to them, and let's collaborate. I'm all about collaboration. I always have been. In certain areas, I always felt like it used to get me in trouble, but I understand, you know, you may not be able to collaborate because everybody doesn't have a collaborative like mindset. You may not be able to collaborate with everybody, but there are people. You find your tribe, you find divine partnerships, and no different than this. I just feel like, you know, that space and Launch Your Podcast Challenge allowed us to find, you know, those people and have us as resources to one another. And, you know,
Yeah,
there's room for everybody. There's
there
room for
is.
everybody. The more the merrier. The more the merrier.
It sure is. That's you couldn't have closed it out more beautifully. I'm gonna stop with that because again, we'll be on here for like another 3 hours.
Aw, thank you for having me on. This has been super dope, and I look forward to more to come. I know that your show will be successful. It's going to be good, and I've seen even from where we started. I know the listeners, they're just seeing like kind of the production or the fruit from the root. But I've seen you get on here and the growth of just, you know, in the short time that I've known you, of what you've been doing. And you know, I only expect excellence going forward. It's just, you know, it's inevitable. You're in the right circles, in the right spaces, and you're doing the work. You're doing the work.
Thank you. And congratulations to your next season as well. That's coming out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. January 5th is my first, yeah, my first episode of the season of Evolve is coming. And I'm excited. I'm excited. It's definitely evolution. I've changed up some things. But some good things in store. I'm excited. I'm excited to see how 2022 and the evolution of the exchange place looks.
Yes, yes. And before we go, let the listeners know where they can find you on the platforms and how they can get a hold of you to follow. Make sure you go and follow. Is it Deborah? Deborah?
It's Deborah. Yeah,
Deborah.
Deborah Faith.
Again, you have like
Yeah.
an accent.
Yeah, I mean, you can call me Deborah. Just know Debbie. We good. Some people call me Faith. It depends on like where people kind of know me and what I guess gravitates to their spirit. So you can follow the podcast on every platform. I'm on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Spotify, iHeart, all of those. We're also go ahead over to YouTube and subscribe to us. If you want to reach out and have any type of, I love to have conversation. I've actually run my own page, but I have two Instagram pages. So I am at Faith 100578 on Instagram, and also at TheXchangePlace, and that's one E, not two, on IG. So yeah, reach out. I love conversation. I love to kind of, I don't want to say pick people's brain, but definitely have conversations. Sometimes they lead to podcasts and shows, and I'm just so excited. I'm excited what's in store. I just feel like there's so much coming in 2022, and we haven't even begun to really dream yet. Like we really haven't. I think we're just kind of scratching, you know what I mean, that little surface, and there's a lot to come. So I'm excited. So check me out. Check me out. Let me know. Send comments. Let me know any we're gonna have merch this season. So I have some merchandise coming, which is gonna be dope. And I'm working on my book. I'm working on my book. I'm working on my book. So yeah, some good things coming.
That is awesome. Thank you again so much for blessing, me with your time and sharing
Absolutely.
your experiences on here on the Unbalanced Pedestal podcast. Again, go check out Deborah. at all her social media handles. I'll make sure I have all that in the description box for you guys. And yes, if you have additional questions, that we have maybe touched on that you want us to maybe elaborate more in the future, please go ahead and do so, and we can make that happen for you in 2022. But again, thank you again for your time. And my name is Tina
Mhm.
Marie, and thank you again for listening to the Unbalanced Pedestal podcast.
See y'all.